I'm Matt Delusion in the Live Center. We just got an update to the criminal charges in that deadly shooting Friday evening in Center City. The DA's office just announced that it is lowering the charges after receiving some new evidence. Now, this was the shooting that happened at 12th and Chestnut, where 33-year-old Lauren Jardine was killed while trying to intervene in a dispute.
On a Friday evening in early September, Center City, Philadelphia was alive with its usual rhythm. The sidewalks along 12th and Chestnut were crowded as office workers poured out of high-rises, shoppers carried bags from retail chains, and street vendors called out to passers-by. The clock had not yet struck 6, and the weekend energy was just beginning to take hold. In this bustling backdrop, a confrontation unfolded that would dominate headlines, spark questions about justice, and ultimately challenge assumptions about how quickly charges can change when prosecutors examine new evidence. This is the story of 33-year-old Lauren Jardine, a woman with ambitions for a steadier future, a woman recognized for educational achievement, and a woman who found herself in the middle of a deadly altercation that played out in full view of the public and in range of multiple surveillance cameras. Within minutes, Lauren's life was cut short. Within days, a charge of murder would be downgraded to voluntary manslaughter. And to this day, the complete footage that prosecutors say drove their decision has not been released for public view. What happened at that corner? Who was involved? And what made prosecutors alter the legal course so drastically in such a short time? Let's walk through this case in the order it unfolded, with only verified information and without speculation. It was September 5th, 2025. The sun was still up, the rush of traffic steady along Chestnut Street. At approximately 5:50 p.m., an argument began outside a 7-Eleven store at the intersection of 12th and Chestnut. Witnesses later described voices being raised, though surveillance footage contained no audio. What is undisputed is that two individuals were at the center of the confrontation: Lauren Jardine and a man named John Kelly, 45 years old, known to frequent the area. According to prosecutors and reporting from multiple outlets, Kelly was observed holding a screwdriver. Surveillance video reportedly shows Lauren displaying a handgun during the altercation. From there, the scene escalated quickly. The two closed distance, engaged in a physical struggle, and in the chaos, control of the weapon shifted. Moments later, multiple shots were fired. Pedestrians scattered. Lauren collapsed. Panic spread across the block as bystanders ran in every direction, ducking behind cars, sprinting into stores, and calling 911. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, thanks to the heavy police presence already assigned to the area. Lauren was rushed to Jefferson University Hospital, located just blocks away. Despite immediate intervention, she was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The official pronouncement marked another life lost to gunfire in a city already grappling with violence, but the circumstances of this case were different. They were captured by multiple cameras, and what those cameras showed would prove decisive. As officers swarmed the scene, John Kelly was located less than a block away. It was not a patrol unit that first stopped him, but a SEPTA transit officer. That detail matters because it highlights the way public transportation policing intersects with street crime in Philadelphia's downtown corridor. The transit officer detained Kelly quickly, and he was taken into custody. The firearm was recovered, as was the screwdriver. The rapid arrest provided prosecutors with an immediate suspect, a clear chain of custody for the weapon, and a case that initially appeared straightforward. A woman had been shot and killed, and the man in custody had fired the gun. In those first hours, the charge announced was murder. Kelly was booked on homicide, possession of an instrument of crime, and weapons offenses. To the public reading breaking news alerts that Friday night and Saturday morning, the story seemed familiar. Another senseless killing in Center City. Another confrontation turned lethal. A suspect in custody, charges filed. But in the days that followed, the narrative changed, and it changed because of the footage. Prosecutors later explained that after reviewing additional video angles, they concluded the facts supported a lesser charge. What the cameras reportedly showed was that Lauren had drawn the firearm first. In Pennsylvania, the legal definition of voluntary manslaughter covers situations where someone kills without premeditation, often in the heat of passion, or under what's called imperfect self-defense, when a person believes they are in danger, even if that belief is unreasonable. The footage, in other words, complicated the clean narrative of murder. And so the district attorney's office downgraded the charge from murder to voluntary manslaughter, while still pursuing weapons offenses and possession of an instrument of crime. The public learned of this shift not through the release of the footage itself, but through prosecutors' statements and local news coverage. No full video has been made available for public viewing. Outlets that reviewed the footage or spoke to officials summarized its contents, but the actual sequence remains unseen by most. That absence has created questions. Questions about transparency, about the role of video in determining charges, and about how prosecutors balance what they believe a jury will see against what the public demands to know. Before we explore those questions further, it's important to pause and recognize who Lauren was outside of this incident. She was not simply a name in a headline. Born and raised in Philadelphia, she had faced challenges in earlier years, but had taken concrete steps to build a different path. Within the previous year, she earned her GED through the city's adult education program. She had been recognized publicly by the mayor's office for her progress. At the time of her death, she was actively pursuing additional job training. She had applied for a commercial driver's license, and she was working towards certifications in forklift operation and HVC repair. On the day of the shooting, she had been in Center City to attend a job fair. Police later confirmed finding a bag with job applications among her belongings. Friends and family described her as someone who was striving for stability and opportunity and who had shown determination to move forward despite setbacks. These details, reported by local outlets, humanize her beyond the headlines. The man arrested that evening, John Kelly, was also not unknown to authorities. Local reporting revealed that he had a criminal record spanning 2 decades, with arrests for robbery, drug possession, and aggravated assault. More recently, he had been arrested for harassing people outside the very same 7-Eleven where the confrontation occurred. In one case, affidavits cited charges of criminal trespass, making terroristic threats, and harassment. A later plea deal reduced some of those charges, but the pattern of behavior tied Kelly repeatedly to that location. For store employees and managers, his presence was described as disruptive and sometimes threatening. This context doesn't determine guilt or innocence in the Jardine case, but it establishes why his presence outside that store was neither new nor unnoticed. So what do we know and what do we not know? We know the time and place, September 5th, just before 6 o'clock at 12th and Chestnut. We know the sequence as reported. An argument escalated, a handgun was displayed, a struggle occurred, shots were fired, and Lauren was killed. We know Kelly was arrested 1 block away by a transit officer and booked on charges including murder. And we know that days later, prosecutors announced a downgrade to voluntary manslaughter, citing new video evidence. These are the verifiable, documented facts. What we don't know is equally important. We don't know the full content of the surveillance video because it has not been publicly released. We don't know the exact reasoning spelled out in the evidentiary memo used by the district attorney's office to support the downgrade because that document has not been made public. We don't know the precise timeline of court proceedings beyond the initial charges and announcements, and we don't know whether additional witness testimony or forensic analysis will shift the narrative further. Those unknowns create gaps, and those gaps invite speculation. But speculation is not what we do here. We stay with the record, and we acknowledge what remains unreleased. From a legal perspective, the shift from murder to voluntary manslaughter is significant. In Pennsylvania, murder requires proof of intent, either premeditated, first degree, or with malice, second degree. Voluntary manslaughter, by contrast, acknowledges the act of killing but frames it as occurring in sudden passion or under an unreasonable belief of threat. By citing the footage as justification, prosecutors effectively told the public that what they saw on the synced angles supported the latter. Whether that decision reflects a tactical choice to pursue a more provable charge or an evidentiary conclusion that murder could not be sustained remains unstated. What matters is that the legal pathway was altered dramatically within days, and that alteration came directly from video. This is not the first case in Philadelphia, or in the country, where video has reshaped charges. What makes this case notable is the speed of the change and the fact that it involved a fatal shooting in one of the most heavily surveilled downtown corridors. Cameras were mounted on buildings, inside stores, and on city poles. Multiple angles existed. When prosecutors lined them up, they decided the story looked different than what initial reports suggested. To the public who has not seen the footage, that gap between official explanation and personal viewing fuels distrust. But to the courts, what matters is the evidence presented in proceedings. And in those proceedings, video is often the most persuasive witness. Returning to the personal dimension, Lauren's death was not just an entry in a legal file. Her family lost a daughter. Her community lost a woman recognized for her determination to improve her life. Her mother, Lauren Jardine, described her as someone inclined to help others. Friends and acquaintances spoke to reporters about her concrete plans for work and stability. These accounts matter because they remind us that behind every charge adjustment and every legal term lies a real life, now gone. For John Kelly, the case continues. He remains charged with voluntary manslaughter, weapons offenses, and possession of an instrument of crime. His prior arrests and record are part of public reporting, but the legal system will judge him based on the events of September 5th and the evidence connected to that date. As the case proceeds, the public may eventually see the footage. Until then, we operate with summaries, statements, and official charges. The corner of 12th and Chestnut has returned to its ordinary flow. Commuters still pass, stores remain open, buses still stop nearby. But for those who were present that evening, the memory of panic and gunfire remains. For Philadelphia, the case serves as another reminder of how quickly life can change, how a confrontation can turn fatal in seconds, and how the legal interpretation of that confrontation can shift once video evidence is scrutinized. So what lessons emerge here? First, that surveillance changes everything. In an era where cameras record from every angle, initial impressions often give way to edited compilations that reshape narratives. Second, that charges are not static. They evolve as prosecutors consider what they can prove in court. And third, that the human cost remains, regardless of legal framing. A woman lost her life, a family grieves, a community asks questions about safety, justice, and transparency. We close with that dual reality. On one hand, the legal system moving from murder to manslaughter based on unseen video. On the other, a mother remembering her daughter, a woman striving for opportunity, gone too soon. Both are true. Both must be held in view. And both remind us that cases are never only about law, they are about people. So I ask you, when video reframes a case, what should prosecutors release first? The footage itself or the internal memo explaining their decision? Which builds more trust with the public? Leave your thoughts respectfully in the comments, and if you want more cases presented with facts only, no rumor, no gore, no speculation, subscribe and stay with us, because here we cite or we cut.